In today's video, we discuss a tragic occurrence involving a diver who went to retrieve the body of another diver who had been missing in the sinkhole for 10 years. It was sad that he got into so many problems because of the promise he made to the victim's parents about getting their son's body back. A deep submerged freshwater sinkhole in the northern Cape region of South Africa is called Boesmansgat, also known as Bushman's Hole. It's thought that Mike Rathbourne, an amateur diver at the time, was the first to investigate Bushman's Hole. The dive is regarded as being exceedingly difficult because of the altitude, which is over 4,921 feet. This indicates that the decompression time will be the same as the time required to dive 1,112 feet below the surface of the ocean. Verna van Schaik, a female diver, was one of many divers who have descended to great depths in the Bushman's Hole. On November 24, 2004, she made the deepest dive, delving to a depth of 725 feet. In 1993, Evan Layden descended to a depth of 197 feet, but he soon fell asleep and had to be revived by a diving companion. He perished in the collision. Nuno Gomes led a diving team in 1994 as they underwent dive training in anticipation of the technical diving they would be doing the following week. For this dive, Dean Dreyer was invited. Dean, a recreational scuba diver from South Africa, was 20 years old at the time. He was raised by his mother, Marie Dreyer, and father, Theo Dreyer, in Vereeniging, which is a town some distance from Johannesburg. He loved adventure, and some of his hobbies were diving, hunting, riding a motorcycle, and racing modified automobiles. Every young person with an adventurous spirit, like Dean, is drawn to the interesting Bushman's Hole sinkhole. Dean was invited to join the South African Cave Diving Association as a support diver at Bushman's Hole, despite having only 2 years of cave diving experience. Since that was his passion and he was prepared to pursue it, he accepted the offer with honor. On December 17, 1994, they left for the training at the Bushman's Hole. Everyone was enjoying their dives as they made their way into the deep water, but then something went wrong with one of them. Dean was there. He had descended to a depth of around 164 feet below the surface. Dean was receding back into the depths, and the other divers noted that his light was vanishing from their line of sight. They made an effort to save him, but before they could grab him, he had strayed too far. His fellow divers believed he might have gone unconscious. It is also known as oxygen toxicity or oxygen poisoning when diving to such great depths because the partial pressure of oxygen increases to a point where it is harmful to the central nervous system. It may result in a variety of symptoms, including breathing problems, vertigo, and seizures. It's possible that Dean experienced oxygen poisoning. Nobody has figured out the enigma of Dean's sinking. However, some residents said that inside this sinkhole there formerly existed a specific serpent that preyed on humans. However, it was thought that something other than the alleged serpent might have been to blame for his demise. Dean may have inhaled excessively, causing carbon dioxide to accumulate in his lungs and eventually rendered him unconscious. In the Bushman's Hole, Dean took his final dive. His body being lost in the water was a horrible event for everyone. Dean's father, however, hired a small, remotely operated submarine used by the De Beers Mining Corporation 2 weeks after Dean's passing as a result of his grief. A distraught father made an effort to pull his son's body from the chilly water. Dean's body was not visible. Only his dive helmet was discovered on the middle floor. No one was able to extract Dean's body from the Bushman's Hole after this effort at doing so. Troops go, soldiers arrive, but barracks remain, some would remark. This phrase perfectly describes the Bushman's Hole. Despite the fact that numerous divers perished inside the cave, many continued to be fascinated by its tremendous depths and pushed themselves to their physical and mental limits. Years came and went. Dean had been dead in the Bushman's Hole for about 10 years at this point. Dean Dreyer, whose body has not yet been pulled from the Bushman's pit, has practically been forgotten by everyone. Dean's body is still inside the sinkhole, as evidenced by the inscription his father erected on a rock at the Bushman's Hole. Dave Shaw jumped into the Bushman's Hole in October 2004. Australian Dave Shaw served as a technical diver, airline pilot, and scuba diver for Cathay Pacific, beginning in 1989. He had previously flown in Papua New Guinea and Tanzania for the Missionary Aviation Fellowship prior to beginning his career with Cathay Pacific. In South Australia and New South Wales, he had also piloted agricultural planes. He was an enthusiastic and friendly individual, Up until his passing, he gave his all to the development of his career. With the Bushman's Hole dive, Dave wanted to push himself to the edge and break a record. He got to about 900 feet. He looked at the sinkhole's bottom for a while. He found it to be an incredible experience. At an altitude of 800 feet, he started to show signs of narcosis, but he didn't make it through. A dead body was discovered lying underground at his back as he was exploring the newly discovered world in Bushman's Hole at a height of roughly 876 feet. This was the first time he had seen the sinkhole's floor. Dean Dreyer's body was there. He had dove into the cave 10 years earlier. Even though his mask was still on, certain of his body parts were devoid of a fleshy covering. Dave couldn't get a good look at his physique because it was already covered in dirt. On that try, he failed to find the body. After a 10-hour dive, Dave surfaced and informed Dean's parents, Theo and Marie, that he had discovered their son's body. The couple initially found this unbelievable, but Dave reassured them that he would come back and retrieve the body from the Bushman's pit. Dave and another diver, Don Shirley, went to perform the recovery operation. It was history's deepest underwater recovery. For the recovery, the two divers devised a sophisticated dive plan. To make the dive, though, they may require up to 9 divers. They were concerned about finding a body that must have remained nearly skeletal because it might have disintegrated. So they made the decision to use a bag to transport Dean's body. The recovery team was equipped with all the necessary equipment for the operation. Except for the helmet camera Dave planned to use, Dave and Don were familiar with the majority of the equipment they were about to employ. He had never used a camera before, and this one was brand new. 2 days prior to the final dive, the whole recovery crew assembled at Bushman's Hole. Dave was tasked with retrieving the body from the depths where it was lying after everyone had been assigned their specific responsibilities. In case anything went wrong during the dive, Dave publicly warned the team to be cautious and avoid putting their own lives in danger in order to retrieve a body from the sinkhole. However, Dave and Don had a secret understanding that they would use their flashlights to signal one another in case they needed assistance in the deep. Dave descended to a depth of 270 meters, where he had previously discovered Dean's body. Don would be waiting to assist in bringing the body to the surface with an approximate 10-hour decompression after he carried it into the bag and submerged it at a depth of 725 feet. The folks waiting at the surface did not see any indication that anyone from the recovery team was exiting with Dean's body. Ben Shake was aware that the scheduled dive had been delayed because something had gone wrong. However, they were still unsure of the specifics of what had occurred, so they continued to wait. After a while of waiting, Don made the decision to swim to the depth Dave had dove to investigate the situation and see what he could do to assist. About 800 feet up, he heard a very loud noise. Regulator Don's controller had ruptured. After locating his comrade, he had to focus on preserving his own life. Don struggled to get back to the support divers who were above him while having to manually control his air supply. Thus, they were able to return to the surface. Don then informed the group that Dave would not be able to return to the surface. Don too nearly passed away in that space. After around 8 hours of decompression, he had lifelong damage that affected his balance. They were in severe pain following Dave's passing, yet they found solace. After the failed attempt at recovery, the police divers returned to Bushman's Hole to retrieve all of the equipment and dive lines that were still there. They watched as Dean and Dave's bodies floated up from the sinkhole's base while they were still trapped in a crevice just beneath the surface. The entire diving crew was greatly surprised by that. They reasoned that they may have earlier dived past it without realizing it. As they could see that Dean's body was below Dave Shaw's, Ben Shake claimed that Dave had kept his word to bring Dean's body back to the surface. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you like what you saw, click the bell icon, like, and subscribe buttons to be notified when we post another thrilling cave diving story.